So how well do you know Games Workshop and Warhammer 40K? Today we're going to be doing a short quiz with 10 questions based around the grim darkness of the far future. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. So today's video is a bit of fun really. In this video we'll have 10 questions on Warhammer 40k. I'll just be reading them out, perhaps make a note of your answers on a piece of paper or something, or just remember them. Then half an hour after this video comes out, I'll be releasing the answers in a separate video, and you can see just how well you've done, compare yourself to the people exaggerating their scores down in the comments, and maybe challenge your friends to do better. This was very much inspired by Jimmy Carr's Quiz of the Lockdown. He's been doing some similar YouTube quizzes, and I thought it could be fun to make one for Warhammer 40k. So without further ado, let's get into the questions, and put your knowledge of the game and the lore of 40k to the test. So question 1, we have a nice simple one. Can you name this character? And you get a bonus point if you can name the sword that he carries. Very sadly, he no longer has rules in the current edition of 40k, but I'm sure plenty of people remember this guy well from previous editions. So 1 point for his name, 1 point for the name of his sword. Next up we have question 2 of 10. Here we have 3 of the more fighty characters that Games Workshop has released for the Primaris Space Marines recently, and the question is who will do more damage to an Imperial Knight in one round of close combat. Is it A. Adrax Agadone of the Salamanders, who wields Malleus Nocturne, B. Torgaradon of the Imperial Fists, who wields the Hand of Defiance, or C. Marnius Calgar, wielding the Gauntlets of Ultramar? We'll say they all get the benefit of charging for Shock Assault, they get to use their Chapter Tactic, and if they have a Warlord trait that's useful for close combat, then they get to use that as well. So who's going to beat up a knight the best? Adrax, Tor, or Marnius? Next up we're going to have a more lore one. Can you name the 3 Loyalist legions that were ambushed at the Isfahan Drop Site Massacre? It's a fairly well-known event, but if you haven't heard of it, it was one of the first battles of the Horus Heresy, when the combined might of most of the traitor legions ambushed just 3 Space Marine legions, wiping out a good chunk of them and also killing the Primarch of 1. For this you get 1 point if you can name all 3 of them. Next up we're over to the Realm of Chaos for question 4. From the latest points cost of these models and the new chapter approved, which of the 4 greater demons cost the most points when they're fielded in their most expensive form, and given all of the upgrades that cost the most points? For this one we're just looking at the actual greater demons, we're not talking about named characters such as Scabithrax or Fate Weaver for example. It's literally the Great Unclean One, the Keeper of Secrets, the Lord of Change, or a generic Bloodthirster. So which one of those will cost the most points? Next up we're going over to the Black Library, and we're looking at the sequence of Eldar books, which includes Path of the Warrior. The question is, who is the author of these books? It was written on the book's front cover, but I've taken the liberty of removing it, because otherwise I thought it might be just a little bit too easy. So that's question 5, who wrote Path of the Warrior? Question 6 then. Lehman Russ is well known to be one of the most mighty of the Primarchs to face in single combat, but at the height of the Great Crusade he was knocked completely unconscious as part of the assault on the Dulan system. Who was it who lays Lehman Russ low? So that's question 6, who knocked out Lehman Russ at the height of the Great Crusade? Question 7, we have another multi-choice one, and this one's venturing into the real world. Games Workshop shares have been doing reasonably well over the last few years. If you had bought their shares in January 2016 and sold them in January 2020, how many times would you have made on your initial investment? Would you have A, doubled your money, B, got 5 times your money, or C, got 10 times your money? This certainly isn't an advert, and I've gone down a bit since due to the coronavirus crash, but with the benefit of hindsight, how much money might you have made if you'd invested in Games Workshop 4 years ago? Question 8 then. The orcs are coming, and you need to choose a high rate of fire artillery piece to try and thin out the horde. You can either deploy a Space Marine Thunderfire cannon or an Imperial Guard Wyvern. If you could choose one or the other, which one would kill the most boys? No googling the stats on these ones, but if you happen to know them, you are permitted to use a calculator if you fancy doing some math hammer. Otherwise just take your best guess. Would you be better off with a Thunderfire cannon or with a Wyvern? Question 9 now, which takes us back to the 5th edition release of Codex Dark Eldar. This codex came out alongside a whole host of Dark Eldar kits, including the vast majority of the current range as it is now. However, there were 5 characters from the HQ section that never got models from this despite them being quite interesting and flavourful, and these characters were sadly cut from the next edition of the codex. So the question is, how many of these 5 characters can you name? You get 1 point if you can get 2 or more of these characters, 2 points if you get 4 or 5, and if you get all 5, then you both get 2 points and also get to look very smug. So that's 5 Dark Eldar characters from the 5th edition codex that never got models and are sadly not present in later editions of the book. Finally, we're going over to Forge World for question 10, and I'd like you to name the top 5 most expensive models for Warhammer 40k available from the Forge World web store. If you have a spare kidney, then maybe you too could buy these 5. For the purposes of this question, if we're talking about Titans, then any variant patterns are going to be included as the same one as are any Chaos versions. For example, there might just be a Mars variant of one of the Titans that will still count as the same one. I'm also including the price of arms or carapace weapons in the final total, as I'd be a bit disappointed if I bought a Titan and didn't have any arms for it. Again, similar to the last question, you get 1 point if you can name 2 or more, and you get 2 points if you name 4 or more. And you get 2 points and get to look very smug if you can name them all, and also you have all of them in your house. So that's question 10, name the top 5 most expensive models for Warhammer 40k available from the Forge World web store. Okay, so I hope you've got all of those questions down. I'll be back with a video half an hour after this one, so we can take a look at how we've all done. Thanks very much for listening to Auspex Tactics, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video.